In fact, the black woman has been a woman at the head of a household, not by choice, but by necessity. And more often, that's right, and more often than not, she is not a strong, matriarchal, aggressive, domineering figure. She is a woman in search of a man. But this story has not been told.
SB, does the black man not get the respect within our own community? And why do you feel like that is?
They don't. We don't respect them because we're just out of order, because a man should be a man no matter what. If he's a man, he should be respected. I mean, that's the least we could do. But I think the reasoning is because before us, so many men, they just did what they were supposed to do, not necessarily what they were supposed to do. They did the minimal. They were very passive. They weren't involved. And so the men that we have today are wanting to be more involved. They want to be the men. You know, they want to help with the kids. They want to be the provider. They want to be the protector. They want to be those leaders. And we're just not receiving it as we should because we're out of order. So it kind of goes back to what everybody has said, a little bit of all of it. But it's just because there was too many men for too long were too passive. And the role of a man didn't show up enough. Now the men are trying to walk in that role, and it's a whole lot of pushback because for so long, women have done so much. And it's like, hey, what you doing? I got this. Relax. And they're like, no, I'm the man. I should be doing it. Yeah, you should. So, you know, will it ever get better? I don't know.
And again, real, but morbid at the same time.
Hey, my Amor brothers, back again. And this piece of video was sent to me by no one. And this is getting kind of monotonous, man. Like I said, you can't make this shit up anymore, right? You really can't. You cannot make this stuff up anymore. Security boss, in this little minute, went back into a corner about black women's disrespect black men, low-key contempt and disrespect of black men. Yeah, which is sign language, that's disrespect. And this kind of disrespect, like I said, that's black women's love language. It really is. And security boss, for the most part, has been what we call a pick-me on the side of what they call black male identified. And for the most part, she has been an advocate for black men in black relationships. I can't say that she hasn't. She's married, you know, yada, yada, yada. Same thing with Shay Sade. But I always tell you that this kind of low-key contempt and disrespect, even amongst the best women, I would say I'll give a security boss her credit. She might be one of the best. She's a little harsh, you know, she's a little critical, but she's got a, well, she's a gynocrat. I don't care what she says, okay? You can hear it in her voice. Even the best ones have traces of their low-key contempt and disrespect. And what she said about the men in the 80s and 90s being passive and not doing what they're supposed to do goes back to what the chick said in the 1970s about black men being passive and allowing black women to do anything that they wanted. And you have to be forceful to make them do what you want, right? It's getting tiresome. It's getting tiresome. I'm not saying that she's a chameleon. I don't believe she is, because we always put that on black women. Because we refuse to really understand and admit that this is just built into the culture. This is ADO's Black American culture. These are our women. This is stuff has been talked about since emancipation. Frazier documented this stuff. Your black women have been rebellious and disrespectful and contemptuous of you since Reconstruction, well out of slavery. Okay, you were enslaved. They blame you for not protecting them in slavery, even with the lashes on your back. They disrespected you and said that you're contemptuous of you and for not protecting them, even when you were hung. Knowing that if you spoke up to protect your wife, you're going to be hung. You're going to sacrifice your life. And they knew that. Black women knew that back then. They knew you had no power in this country. You still don't. And they blame you. And that's not going to stop. Man, this is not going to stop. You think that this is going to be over. This is not going to stop. The cultural and historical momentum is too much. You will be blamed as long as you're in this system. That stuff never goes away. You'll be long dead and buried, and your bones turned to dust. And your progeny will be still dealing with this problem. This is the way they are. This is exactly the way they are. I put another piece from that 1970s clip about the debate between black men and black women. Just another little clip. They're saying the same thing, which is the same thing James Earl Jones said in 1968. She's repeating the same thing, that black women are unwilling matriarchs. They're not saying that they're not matriarchs, or this is not a gynocracy. They're just saying that because of the black man's failure, they have to be a gynocrat. They have to be a matriarch. They need to side with the white women and take power because the black man wouldn't, or he couldn't. Most likely he wouldn't. So all their disrespect and contempt and their criticism, their sign language, which they feel about themselves and project onto you, it's all your fault. They have babies out of wedlock because it's your fault. Even though black men wear more condoms and use birth control more than any other group. Even though black men go to jail for child support more than any other group. Even though black men take on more children and women with children than any other group. They're the best stepfathers than any other group, because first thing I talk about when I mention to other groups, other cultures about taking on women with children out of wedlock, man, they say, are you nuts? We don't do that. But black men are socialized to do it. We're so socialized to serve in this culture that we don't even get credit for it. And then on top of that, they disrespect us for not acting like other men while expecting us to carry out our traditional roles in this culture, in this survival culture. Because the black family, as my partner used to say, the black family is not a family, it's a survival unit. Which it did do its job, because we always praise the black community and the black family for allowing its members to survive through this horrific treatment for the last 300 years. But we don't realize that we're in a bunker. The black family is a fallout shelter. It's a bomb bunker to protect you from the outside world. And all the dysfunction that inside it doesn't matter, because that's what's necessary to keep this thing going, and we call ADOS. And all the necessary adaptations that we had to have or had to live through, which is the black man couldn't speak up to a white man, but what black woman could. So she had to be the go-between between the dominant society and her black man. Otherwise, if he spoke up, he'd be hung, and she knew it. But that got projected onto him as weak and passive, just like she was saying about the black men in the 80s and 90s, passive. Even though me as a boomer would take on women that had children by drug dealers or had children out of wedlock. And we financially and socially and culturally rescued this whole society by taking on that burden of women have babies out of wedlock. Not only as stepfathers, as boyfriends, as coaches, as teachers. We stepped in and we stepped into the gap. And guess what we got for it? We get this. She might as well say that black men in the 80s and 90s weren't shit. And that's how come they get disrespected. Why don't you just go ahead and say it instead of couching it in these cute terms? Oh, they were passive. Just say, go ahead and say it like everybody says. Black men in the 80s and 90s weren't shit. Just like the woman in the 1970s said the black man in the 40s, 50s, and 60s wasn't shit either. Just say it. Get to the end. Stop trying to make the contempt and the disrespect low level. Stand on that shit. There's one thing I gotta respect Cynthia G. She stands on her fucking disrespect. She stands on it. These divestors, I can say one thing. If nothing else, we might not like them. We can respect them because they stand on their disrespect. Instead of this low level hand rubbing, back rubbing, low key, passive aggressive saying that you ain't shit. Because that's really what she said. The reason you get disrespected because you're weak, you're passive, and you ain't shit. I'm kind of getting tired of this. If you If you got to be this way and you want to blame us for what you can't get together, that you can't correct yourself, because that's all it is. You're blaming us for your attitudes. You're blaming us for how you feel. You're blaming us for something you should have corrected generations ago. They didn't just start talking about this. They started talking about this in the 30s. The exact same thing. Zora Neale Hurston, in The Eyes of Watching God, she was talking about this in the 30s. How rebellious black women, black wives were to their men, how disrespectful they were to their men. Back in the 30s, this is not new. It should have been corrected. Really, black men should have bounced as soon as the gates were open. Just like black women went and got welfare, black men should have bounced and left the black family. Point blank, period. Go get another man. Go find another kind of man. Black men should have wholesale just left. The fact that we didn't, the fact that we stood under all this assault and this disrespect, not only by the white dominant society, but also from our women, it's a testament to our fortitude and faithfulness to this culture. Black men, you have nothing else to prove. You have nothing to prove to black people and black women. You have nothing else to prove. You have nothing else to give them because they're not going to change, in my opinion. They're not going to change. And I love them to death. I love my black women. Love them to death. But you got to admit the truth as you see it. The truth as it is. How many times do they have to tell you? How many videos? How many different circumstances from family courts all the way to passport bros? You can't even go overseas without these heifers clapping at you while they're doing the same thing and lying about it. But it's different when you do it. At some point, you're going to have to turn that chip off. Turn that Winter Soldier chip off inside your brain and stop saying, I'm ready to comply when they start with the sign language. You know, that book that woman's reading out of, that black woman's reading out of, that's sign language. And the first thing you do is bow down and say, I'm ready to comply. At some point, that's got to end. I don't know when that is, because every time I talk to a brother, they always say, as long as it takes. And I just shake my head. You are not ready to be free. You are not ready to stand on your square. And if you're not, that's fine. So be it. If it makes you happy and it makes you content, then go for it. But at some point, you're going to have to stand on your square. You're going to have to stand on your own 2 feet. You'll have to say, no, I don't accept this. And if you feel this way about me, you're going to greet me with sign language, which is criticism, and an attitude, which is low-level contempt, and that constant disrespect that you heap upon us on a daily basis from the time that we're, 2 or 3 years old and we can actually understand language. At some point, you're going to have to say, no, we don't accept this. No. You know what? Understand our history. I understand that we made it through this rocky road. But guess what? You don't owe them a goddamn thing, man. You don't. They keep trying to say that you owe them something. They're here. They survived. The black community is what it is. Okay. They got their reparations package from the white women. The white women took your affirmative action, gift wrapped by their handmaiden, which is black women. Black women got their little severance, their little chunk, and you got put out on the curb. They got theirs. You don't owe them anything anymore. Stop acting like you do. You don't owe them an explanation. Hey, that's the past. It is what it is. We are no longer going to accept your low-level contempt and disrespect. We're not. Let's go ahead and get this divorce and get it over with. That's what I'm saying. With that, I'm going to jump off here. This is BGS out, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.